I'm going to share a bit about what I do, what got me into this ecosystem, what my company does, and then we're really going to go into blockchain and cryptocurrencies and keep these things really, really simple. Originally, I'm from Austria, Europe. I studied medicine. I always wanted to become a medical doctor. I was a professional kite surfer before for 10 years, and my mom had always told me, yeah, any kite surfers here? Show of hands? Ah, yeah, whoa, a couple of you, great. So my mom has always told me, Julian, you need to do something real in life. You can't be a surfer for the rest of your life. So I said, okay, I'm going to study medicine. And I became a trauma surgeon. So I was working, and I felt miserable. It was not what I wanted to do. And so in 2012, I quit. I quit medicine, and I moved to Asia. And in 2014, I met someone who's from the same city as I am, and we met in Bangkok, complete random coincidence. And it's the guy that's sitting on the left of me. I'm there with the pink shirt. And he told me about this new concept called cryptocurrencies and blockchain. And this is now roughly 4 years ago. And I had heard about blockchain in 2011. A patient of mine had actually told me about it. But he made it so scammy that I didn't pay attention. And back then, actually, Bitcoin was at $1. And when Toby told me about Bitcoin again in 2014, Bitcoin had just hit $1,000. So I sat there and I thought, wow, had I just listened to that patient and had invested $1,000, I would have had $1 million by then. So I got really motivated and excited and started investing in cryptocurrencies in 2014. Well, it was just on the downtrend back then. We had something similar that's happening today. And I thought I was really, really smart, and I'm going to wait until the market goes down a bit. So the market started going down from 1,000 to 800, and the all-time high back then was $1,200 a Bitcoin. And I said, wow, you know, I'm so smart. I bought Bitcoin at a discount. The discount minus 30%. Whoa, I really got a bargain. Bitcoin started dropping to 700. I was still brave, you know, hodl, I can do it. Bitcoin was at 600, at 500, 400. I completely bailed out. I got so nervous. I sold all my Bitcoins and thought, you know what, Julian, that lesson learned, you lost 50% of your money. Bitcoin kept going down, 300, and I felt like a hero. You know, oh, at least I didn't stay with all these losers who had all their money back down. And Bitcoin went to 250, and I said, okay, that's it. Bitcoin is never, ever going to go back up again. That's the death of Bitcoin. And, well, what happened was a very interesting thing, something that I see a bit today, just at a higher level. Bitcoin started to lose interest. And that's something that I might want to share with you very beginning, is there's caring and there's not caring. And if you care a lot, you might love something or you might hate something. And so what you see in the press today, and I write for a lot of press outlets because I think it's really important to educate the public. And you see either the press being pro-Bitcoin or con-Bitcoin. So that means everyone is caring about cryptocurrencies right now. We're going to see this moment again, probably this year, when people just don't care anymore. And that was 4 years ago, or this was actually 3 years ago then, when suddenly cryptocurrencies completely turned around. And it was when Bitcoin went from 250 to 300 to 400 to 500, and that's when I started FOMOing out. Because I had this fear of missing out that Bitcoin started going up again. And I bought into Bitcoin. Bitcoin had this really large ride since then over the past 2.5 years, and with that, many, many, many other cryptocurrencies. The reason I'm telling you this is because we had this question back then. Cryptocurrencies are such a great idea, but how can you make these cryptocurrencies actually usable? How can you use them in real life? And so that's why we created a company called 10x 2.5 years ago in 2015 in Singapore, where our mission is to make cryptocurrencies actually usable in real life. We have an app that you can download. You can download it on iOS. You can download it on Android. It's called 10x. And from there, you can order a debit card, and you can use this debit card connected to cryptocurrencies, and then use this card just like you would use another credit card to spend your Bitcoin or Dash or Ether or many, many tokens. And so this was a journey over the past 2.5 years. And last year, 10x did one of the largest ICOs in history. It's still the largest ICO in Asia. We received $80 million from token buyers. For those of you that don't know what an ICO is an initial coin offering where a company creates their own cryptocurrency and exchanges that for another cryptocurrency like a Bitcoin or Ether. And our cryptocurrency Pay works like a loyalty program, similar like airline miles do or other loyalty programs. And from that point on, back then we were still only 8 people, we had this massive surge. It was the surge from being a company that very few people knew, we had a few thousand users, to today we have 60 team members, 60 employees, we have funding, we have some really talented people working for us, we have over 200,000 users, we are applying for a banking license in Europe, we are, at the moment, we are in pretty much every continent in the world, and this was not only a challenge on how to educate people about cryptocurrencies. It was not only about how to build a team and keep a culture. It was really this entire struggle of how can you connect something that's so new to something that people might be familiar with. And that's how one of those missions came in, which is called How to Make People Crypto Fit. So I have this company called 10x, where it's really about making cryptocurrencies spendable, and then I have this mission called How to Make People Crypto Fit, fit in cryptocurrencies. And I wrote this book last year. It's called Cryptocurrencies, Explained Simply. I have a book signing afterwards for those that either have the book or you want to buy it at the library. And in this book is really easy to use. It started, how could we teach our team members really, really fast how to get into crypto? We had these really talented people who came from all walks of life, lawyers, compliance people, operational people, obviously developers. How can they easily onboard into the system? And that's how this book got started. We have now sold over 100,000 copies. Originally, it started in German in Europe. Now we have it in English. We are getting it into Spanish and French. And this is really a project that comes from heart. And I'm not sure if you have seen this. This picture was shared a lot. It was Elon Musk who was here. Someone from our company, Veronica, ran out to him. And I had signed initially in there, said, hey, Elon, to Mars and beyond, make the world crypto fit, Julian. And Veronica ran out and handed him this book, and he opened the book. And he read that message, obviously, and then he smiled. He kept the book. I'm not sure if he's reading it. I hope he is. But we received a lot of feedback, obviously, and people kind of misinterpreted and said, Elon Musk is investing into cryptocurrencies. So, that's how sometimes the media can be swaying into a direction that is not really there. Great, so that's a bit of my background and a bit of where I'm coming from and what's happening. I don't want to only talk about cryptocurrencies today. I want to talk about a forecast that the World Economic Forum made that says in the next 7 to 8 years, 10% of the world's value, if you want to call it, will be stored on blockchains. And this is something that's really, really, really fundamental, because it is like saying 20 years ago that, let's say in 1998, people saying 10 years later, 2008, 10% of everything that's happening will be happening online. Now, this concept of online, I'm pretty sure if I ask you to raise your hand, it's a silly question to ask who is familiar with the concept of online, because everyone understands the concept of online. But 20 years ago, I'm pretty sure many people would have not understood the concept of what it means to be online. But we're going to see the same shift now in the next 10 years. And if you're in this room, may I know any business owners here in the room? Show of hands, business owners? Okay, oh, a couple of you, thank you. Great. For business owners, what does this mean for your business? For investors, what does this mean for me as a new potential asset class? If I'm a regulator and I speak to regulators all around the world, I met with Christine Lagarde from the International Monetary Fund. I meet with central banks from literally any country in the world, advising them, talking to them, how do these things work? What do these things mean? This is a really, really, really relevant question, because it is the same question of what does it mean for me if in 10 years things are online when today everything was offline? And so what I want to do now in these 15 minutes is to explain these concepts to you. I'm going to use a lot of examples that I've used in the book. The book is a bit more detailed and goes into more depth. But I'm going to go in 5 steps. And I promise you today, you're going to walk out of this door and you're going to understand concepts like a blockchain. You're going to be able to explain the concept of a blockchain to a 10-year-old. That's always how I measure it. Because Albert Einstein always said, only when you can explain something super simple, you truly understood it. And so me saying that I want you to understand it as if you were a 10-year-old doesn't mean that I degrade you. It actually makes it really difficult, because I have to use words that are really easy, very simple, very straightforward. But only then you're going to be walking outside and you can actually explain these concepts to someone else. And we're going to do this in 5 steps. And then we're going to look beyond cryptocurrencies. We're going to look at what other blockchain applications might be there. And how meaningful are cryptocurrencies actually? Are cryptocurrencies an interesting application, or are they actually a quite boring one? What would be interesting? So let's start with the concept of consensus. It's the most important concept to understand, and very few people actually understand this word. It's a complicated word, so I'm going to use a very simple term for it. Consensus is nothing else of what happened and what didn't happen. Consensus is what is. And it's a really, really, really simple term, because we take the world, reality, as it is. Now, I don't know who of you has read the book 1984 from George Orwell, one of the all-time classics. Great, yeah, many of you. You should read it. I think it's an all-time classic. And in this book, this concept of the past is not the past. The past can be changed. What happens today can change the past, and the past can change the future. Are you asking Alexa already what consensus is? So this concept of consensus is really important to start with. We need to understand how reality gets defined. So far, we mostly define reality in a centralized system. Centralized systems means we have a government, we have a bank, we have a company like Facebook, and they define what's happening and what's not happening. A government either issues a passport to you, or if you're unlucky that you live in the wrong government, you just don't get a passport. You are fortunate that you live in the US, and I'm pretty sure most people in the US have the possibility to get a passport. But then there's some people in the US who just don't get a passport. And there's almost nothing that these people can do to get a passport. Why? Because it's a centralized system over your identity. We look at a bank. A bank is a centralized institution that says how much money you have and how much money you don't have. They are in charge. They control this. Facebook. Facebook controls your data. They own your username, they own your password, and if they want to close your account, and I'm pretty sure there's people in this room who had their accounts closed by Facebook, by Twitter, and so on, you lose your account. They decide over what's reality and what's not reality. They decide on what's consensus and what's not consensus. So the opposite of that would be decentralized. Decentralized versus centralized is the same concept as online and offline. So instead of creating a centralized consensus, we now create a decentralized consensus. And this is where we're going to go deeper now. What does this mean to create a decentralized consensus? So no centralized party. In theory, no government. In theory, no bank. In theory, no central company like Facebook. I'm going to talk about all these things without judging. So I'm just going to lay out facts, and I'm going to start judging at the very end, and I'm going to give you some opinions on where I think this thing should be going, or what is likely and what is unlikely. So take all this without judgment. Let's dig further down in the decentralized consensus. And now we have something called so-called distributed ledger technologies, DLTs. You might have heard that. Distributed ledger technologies. And this is where we dig deeper into this rabbit hole of decentralized consensus. Decentralized consensus works, and we're going to use this concept now of a blockchain, which is the left version. It works this way. Instead of having a bank, and we're going to use the concept of a cryptocurrency in this case, instead of having a bank telling you how much money you have in your account, or instead of a bank making sure that if you transfer money to someone that this works properly, there is no bank. And so if we use the people in the room here, instead of transferring money and going to a bank to transfer it, you own money and you tell everyone in the room that you just transferred this money to any given person. And since all this is happening online, you don't tell them a name, you give them an account number, just like an email address. And this is called a public address in the concept of a cryptocurrency. So you tell everyone that you just sent a certain coin or any kind of value to this address. And you have to wait a little bit, because in the concept of a blockchain, you have time blocks. And you have to wait a few time blocks until the entire community knows that you just did this transaction. And what they do is they confirm this. So you can see that at least 51% confirmed that they received your information. And if 51% received this information from you, they call it confirmed, and decentralized consensus has been created. Because everyone, or at least the majority in the room, in the world, whatever group you want to define, receive from you this information and they confirm, yes, you just sent a certain amount of value to this address. The advantage of this is straight. It doesn't need the bank. I don't need the bank. Anyone can join such a system because I just joined the community. And since all these communities are open source, which means anyone can join, there's no borders, there's no limits, there's no age discrimination, no gender. It doesn't even distinguish between human and robot. Anyone, anything can join a decentralized ledger technology community, in this case, a blockchain. So what is a blockchain? A blockchain is nothing else where every participant of a group, of a community, keeps track in a digital file of what's happening. And they keep track and in time blocks. For example, in the case of Bitcoin, the most popular kind of currency, 10 minutes. So they look for 10 minutes approximately. And as soon 51% of the participants say, you know what, this is what happened, it gets confirmed, and it's in your time block. And these blocks get chained together through cryptography, which is a mathematical formula, and that's how these blocks get chained together. And that's what's a blockchain. A blockchain is therefore nothing else than a digital file that every participant shares of what has happened. And whenever something new happens, people update the digital file again. It's decentralized consensus. With that comes a major, major downside. And that is the downside of scaling. Scaling means if there's a group of us, let's say 300, 400 people in the room, and we have to update these things, it works quite well. I mean, computers are really fast. They can pay attention to updating the digital files, chaining these together in different time blocks. So the scaling means how often can I update this system? How often can I update my digital file? How often can I update my ledger? If it's 1,000 people, it's okay. But once there's 1 million people, 1 billion people, 1 trillion things and people that all start sending these things back and forth, who can keep up with these things? Who can keep up of what's happening? Remember, 51% always have to approve. The majority always has to approve. Otherwise, no consensus is created. There is no central party. There is no bank that says, this is what happened, that's what not happened. Every participant participates in it. So there's certain solutions to this scaling. The first solution actually lies within blockchain. And the idea is, you can call this either sharding or you can call this so-called channels, which means you don't always have to let everyone know. So we could say, okay, only this block here in the right front corner, we're just gonna create new consensus among each other. We don't care about the outside block, but only us can send money to each other. The others don't know. And whenever we tell the others, they need to be included in a consensus again. So we create small little subgroups within the blockchain. This is something that's being created at the moment. It's called, for example, Lightning Network, where 2 people do this together. In Ethereum, this is called sharding. So there's a lot of solutions to this scaling problem. Because many of you might have heard that Bitcoin can only do 6 to 7 updates, 6 to 7 transactions a second. Or if you use SegWit, which is an update, 12 to 14, maybe 15 transactions a second. That's nothing if you compare this to hundreds of thousands of transactions that Visa, for example, is doing every second. So a decentralized system has a downside, and that downside is speed. It has a huge upside. The upside is there is no bank that can screw me. There is no government that can screw me. There is no company that can screw me. But it comes at a cost, and the cost is speed. It's not as fast. People think it's fast, but it's not. It's actually quite slow compared to a centralized system. If you want instant, PayPal is instant. You send me a receipt by email, I click on it, I pay, 1 second later you have your confirmation. It works because there's a centralized party, PayPal, that you and me trust that our transfer works. If we do the same things to Bitcoin, you send me a reference, I send you, I don't know, $20. I need to inform at least 51% of you that I just send you $20. And this takes some time. And this takes a few confirmations. And in Bitcoin, we say we need at least 3 to 4 time blocks 3 to 4 confirmations until a transaction actually happened. There are other solutions as well out there. So we have a blockchain. The blocks get chained together. At least 51% have to be there to create consensus. There are other solutions to create decentralized consensus. For example, IOTA is using the so-called Tangle. It's quite questionable if it works. There's a lot of criticism towards that. It is very interesting from a games theoretical point. What it basically does is, and it's the middle one, it says, as long as neighborhoods agree, it's fine. It doesn't have to be 51%. It doesn't have to be everyone. It's okay if a few people agree, if enough people agree. And this makes a lot of sense because even if we have trillions of things trying to create consensus, as long as enough people agree, it would work. But there are a lot of attacks possible in this case, because what if there's a cheater who kind of tries to game the system and constantly switches back and forth between these local communities? There's a lot of other problems in this. There's another company right now, this is actually a company working on something quite interesting, which is called the hash graph. The hash graph creates decentralized consensus through gossip. Gossip is something that we humans are really familiar with. And it works this way. Whenever I hear something from someone, I check over and over again if I hear the same kind of gossip from other people as well. Makes a lot of sense. If I hear this really kind of dirty gossip from someone and I hear it from three other directions, I'm pretty sure this is actually what happened. Especially if I realize that over time, something happens repeatedly and the same person tells me this kind of gossip. Then I start trusting this person more and more, and something like super trust is created. So these are more updated versions. No one knows if a Tangle or the hash graph is going to work better as a decentralized ledger technology as blockchain. And that's why at the moment, banks, governments, and most companies are actually mostly looking into blockchains and are looking into these other solutions, second layer solutions like Lightning, like sharding, and so on, that could work on top of blockchain, where secluded groups work among each other. And that's the major challenge of how to solve a scaling problem. So let's dig deeper into the rabbit hole. We talked about consensus, we talked about centralization versus decentralization, we talked about these decentralized ledger technologies to create this decentralized consensus. Now what's next? What's next is the applications that use blockchain. Blockchain does nothing else than create decentralized consensus. The question is, for what? And one of the applications of a blockchain is a cryptocurrency. So nothing else gets stored in the system as who sends how much to whom. How much money is in the system. And we're going to be talking about there's hundreds of different applications of a blockchain. And we're going to talk about how exciting cryptocurrency actually is. The reason why cryptocurrency is the first application of a blockchain that became so popular is because everything is there. Cryptocurrencies are online, they are digital, we are familiar with this concept. So everything is there. It doesn't need necessarily the connection to the offline world. We're going to talk about what are the challenges in these other applications. So if someone asks you what's the difference between a blockchain and a cryptocurrency, it's very simple. The blockchain is nothing else than the infrastructure. It's like the internet. It's the hardware, if you want to call it. The rails. Cryptocurrency is one of the possible applications of a blockchain. It's like WhatsApp. It's like the browser. It's a messaging system, if you want to call it. And if we dig deeper from there, we end up with Bitcoin, all the altcoins, and many, 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 many shitcoins. All these things are different cryptocurrencies. What does this mean to be a different cryptocurrency? It's very straightforward. It means you have different rules. You have a different maximum supply. You have no maximum supply. Ethereum has no supply cap. Bitcoin has a maximum supply of roughly 21 million. It's not exactly 21 million, it's just slightly below. It's the different rules you have how to transfer one coin to another coin. It's the rules on how you get an account in this system. And this is what differentiates Bitcoin from Litecoin, from Dash, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. And there's just some rules that are quite questionable. There are certain rules, for example, if I can create as many coins as I want, and I'm the only person who can create all these coins. I don't know how trustworthy this is for everyone else if I'm the person who can just create all these coins. In Bitcoin, this is quite strictly regulated. In Bitcoin, every 10 minutes, the person who participates in creating consensus, which is called mining in Bitcoin. So if I'm mining, that means I create consensus. One of these people receive a certain amount of Bitcoin. At the moment, it's 12.5 Bitcoin, but this is getting lower and lower over time. And this is how people receive Bitcoin out of nothing in Bitcoin. So it's not that there's one person who gets all the Bitcoin. No, it's randomly distributed in the system. And then you have coins, for example, our own coin, which is called 10x pay like paying. In our system, 200 million pay tokens were created at the very, very beginning. It's very clear, the rules are really transparent, that we can't create more pay tokens, and over 50% were given to the public. So the company themselves, we own around, at the moment it's like 48%, and 52% are owned by the public. And this is transparent, it's openly visible. What would be, in my opinion, very questionable, if we as a company would be able to just print or mint or create more tokens by ourselves. And this is where a lot of these concepts of shitcoins come in, who just kind of claim to be the next best thing, but then they're actually quite scammy. So let's summarize down and go down the rabbit hole. We started with consensus. What happened, what didn't happen. This can be created centralized or decentralized. The decentralized consensus is what we're looking for, because the centralized is the one we're really used to. Decentralized means we have a blockchain or we have something else, but let's focus on the blockchain. Time blocks get added together and get stored in a file that everyone that's participating in this group agrees on, that this is what happened. This can be used, for example, for cryptocurrencies, for example. There's many, many, many other applications. We're going to talk about a couple. And out of these cryptocurrencies, we have, for example, Bitcoin, we have Dash, we have many, many others. And the difference between all those is different rules and so on. I hope this is clear. I hope today when you walk out of this room, these concepts are clear. And when you read about these in the press or when someone talks to you about it, you can actually understand the kind of grand kind of concept of this. Is that good for everyone so far? Good. Now, winter is coming to these cryptocurrencies. And the reason I'm saying this is very clear. Similar like in the internet time, people came up with these really fantastic ideas in the 1990s of what the internet could do. And things were created out of the blue. They had no value, they had no use case. And people started investing millions and billions of dollars into these things. And we see something very similar today. If I ask you, and this is my challenge to cryptocurrencies in general, if I ask you, what's the clear benefit for you as an American citizen in the US of Bitcoin versus the dollar? I'm pretty sure the majority of you would say, I'm not sure. I mean, so far, yeah, of course, the US could do better. The Fed could do better. Of course, everyone can do better. But I mean, my dollar in my pocket, it gets me my coffee. My credit card gets me my gas. I'm fine. I don't understand. Why do I need to care about these decentralized things? Many, many times, there's a fault in many, many business owners. And instead of trying to solve a problem, they try to create a solution to find a problem. This is a really important concept. And I think in many, many applications of cryptocurrencies, not in all, but in many, there's a lot of companies who are trying to come up with a solution and they search for a problem, while they should be finding a problem and looking into a solution. So when today you buy into a coin or you invest into something, truly ask yourself, is this company truly solving a problem that's actually there? Or could a centralized system actually also solve that? Because if a centralized system if that centralized system is able to solve something, a centralized system is always cheaper, it's always faster. The only problem is, if you don't trust it, you can't use it. If it misuses its trust, it can cheat on you. But there will always be some kind of centralized system who's not going to misuse its power. Not at any given time, but over time. We have seen this over and over again. Where companies misuse their power, they failed, and other companies did really well. Where governments misused their power, and others did really well. Where banks misused their power, and others did really, really well. So this pure explanation of cryptocurrencies having a reason to exist, simply because we shouldn't be trusting centralized organizations. I'm not sure if this isn't a created solution for a problem that a lot of people don't have. Now, I agree. There's a lot of people on this planet who also have this problem, that live in a government where they don't get a passport, where they live and don't get a bank account, that don't have access to certain social media, to the internet, and so on. I totally agree. I'm just kind of challenging you on some opinions. And I'm challenging you because I'm challenging myself. Because I challenge myself because I work in this industry, and I build a company that works with cryptocurrencies. One of the reasons we do, however, is we really focus on other applications. We focus on what else is possible. For example, we're working on a concept called Comet, where we are looking into how to connect all these cryptocurrencies, all these blockchains, so that just how today intranets communicate with the TCP/IP protocol to become an internet. The future maybe could be that different blockchains with different applications, different use cases, can communicate with each other and maybe not need an internet or need different kind of infrastructure. So it would be decentralizing certain things even better, making them more efficient. We're looking into these things exactly because we ask ourselves these questions. Now, I come out of medicine, and I don't want to hype any company who's doing some things, but I just want to explain to you a couple of use cases that I really think are relevant. And they're struggling on a different kind of point, and I'm going to explain to you on what they're struggling. But it's not the blockchain. I was a medical doctor. I was a trauma surgeon. And we had many, many patients who came into our hospital in Innsbruck, Austria, skiing resort, biking resort, who got injured. And they came from other countries. And so when we got these patients, many times we had no history from these people. Zero. They couldn't talk many times. They were alone. We didn't know who was there. If they were lucky, they had someone. If they were lucky, they could talk to us. So we had to guess a lot, do literally any test up front because we didn't want to hurt them, as good as possible. There's a really big downside from these patients. So what would be the ultimate solution? The ultimate solution would be that there was a central global database where every one of us could go and insert all our data. This is when I'm born, this is what my blood type is, these are my allergies, this is the surgery I had when I was 12, when I was 18, when I was 24, blah, blah, blah. Everything is in there. This is the medication I'm taking right now, this is what I took 3 years ago, this is what I took 2 years ago, this is how I reacted to this. Man, as a doctor, this is like heaven. I just go into this database, I check, and I see, okay, great, I'm not allowed to give this antibiotic because that person is going to be allergic to that. Oh, that person has this deficiency, okay, great. It would allow me to react in a completely different way. Oh, this person is taking blood thinners. Okay, I have to be careful on this. Fantastic. Why does it not exist? Because no one in their right mind trusts their entire medical history to some central company, to some centralized system, to something that might be hacked, might be misused by an insurance company, by your employer, and so on. Because the risk is insanely high. No one wants to do this. That's why it just doesn't exist. And companies have tried and they've failed. So what would be the solution? Well, the solution would be to create decentralized consensus. Instead of having a centralized data storage, and that's why I have data storage, because I just use an example of medicine, but it could be used for anything. I just have medicine because that's my background, that's a passion of mine. And we store data in this in a decentralized manner. No one has access to it, except for myself. Because there is no data storage that can be hacked. It doesn't exist. There's no company that can use it against me. It just doesn't exist. So what's the catch-22? The catch-22 is, how can I, as a person, identify myself to a system that no one is in charge of, that's decentralized by definition? What's the identification? Is it fingerprint? That can be faked, and there's a lot at stake. Is it an iris scan? There's a lot at stake. So how do I identify myself to a system that's not run by a human? That's the challenge that has to be solved, in my opinion, in this case. And so this is not a blockchain problem. It would be the perfect solution for a blockchain. It reminds me of how 1998, Pet.com selling pet food was like this ultimate great solution. Selling pet food online. Why did it fail? Because the rest wasn't there. Delivery wasn't there. No one wanted to wait 2 weeks to get their food. All this entire logistics system wasn't set up. It wasn't because of Pet.com. It wasn't because payment solutions weren't there. There was no trust on this system. Logistic wasn't there. and it failed. And that's something that I see here. It needs other things, and blockchain would be the perfect key for something, to solve something that all of us actually want, but none of us can do right now because we wouldn't trust the centralized party with this, by right. Let me talk about another solution, insurance. Insurance sounds like this really, really great business model. Imagine this. You have a life insurance. I'm pretty sure many in the room here have a life insurance. And you think, life insurance, I'm paying every month. People don't buy insurance because they want to use it. They don't. People buy insurance as insurance. It's not because they hope they need to use their insurance. So they pay their insurance every month over and over again. Let's say you pay your life insurance $50 every month. And let's hope nothing happens. But let's say worst case happens, and you need that life insurance. The worst nightmare is that you have been paying for 30 years, and then because of some, lawsuit that this insurance is going to take against your case, you're not being paid your insurance. The moment you need it most, you can't trust that centralized company. So how fantastic would it be putting this on a digital, decentralized computer, like Ethereum? Ethereum is not a cryptocurrency per se. It works like a decentralized computer. Except for a computer that is in your living room and that someone could hack or someone could attack, it's on the entire world, distributed. And so something called a smart contract, so a contract that doesn't need a human being, but it's actually executed by this entire global computer. Instead of me making a contract with an insurance company, I go to Ethereum and I say, listen, here's the other party, this insurance company, and I make a smart contract with this party. I say, as long as I'm paying $50 every month, if I can prove that this happened, there's nothing you can do, you have to pay. So it's not about you challenging me, it's not about you not paying me. It's actually me proving that this happened and immediately you paying me. There's no way around it. An entire computer in the entire world is making sure this is what's happening. This is called a smart contract on Ethereum. And there's companies who are working on this. And this sounds fantastic. Think about it. I can have my insurance, I pay every month, and I don't have to worry about that this insurance cannot be fulfilled. If I have a health insurance, I can actually track certain events. If I have a car insurance, I can track certain events. I can track when I buy something or when I sell something. It's 100% authentic. But now it gets crazy. It's a smart contract. There's no rules, there's no laws. What happens if person B over there starts making a bet on this smart contract and say, hey, you know what? I want in on this. If something happens to Julian, I want to receive $100. And I'm willing to pay $10 every month. And if something happens to Julian, I want to get $100. And person C says, man, that's a really great deal. Let's bet on Julian happening something. There's no one who can stop this. And I'm going to get in on this smart contract. And I'm going to be paying $10 a month. If something happens to Julian, I'm also going to get $100. Whoa. No one can suddenly stop betting on life events. Suddenly people can start betting on your house burning down and them making money of that. So having decentralized insurance can actually completely backfire. Because suddenly there's more interest for your house to be burned down than your house not to be burned down. And there's nothing and no one that can stop this. Remember, it's decentralized, it's all over the world. This is where it gets really crazy. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because there are smart people, and I hope many of you are in the room, that look into solving actual problems and finding really great solutions. Because the future is not going to be that anything that we envision today is going to happen. It's going to be that in 1998, people would have no clue that 20 years later, Facebook, Twitter would be as they are, that Uber exists as they do, Airbnb, and so on and so on and so on. No one would have envisioned that. So my challenge to you is to stop looking into centralized being this dictatorship and looking at decentralized being the solution, because decentralization can actually mean anarchy. Can actually mean no one is in charge. And if no one is in charge, some people who take charge can destroy the entire system. It can also mean that people don't have power. So the solution is, and that's what this guy made out of people with a hammer in the hand should represent. It should be that a decentralized system still creates trust, but it still empowers the people who are part of this. For example, we at 10x, what we are working on this year is that at the moment you have to trust us as a company. But how about if we would make sure that you always control your own money, your own coins with us? So we could never, even if you are really malicious, let's say you're doing illegal stuff, let's say you want to use our service for illegal stuff, we could not seize your funds. We could only block you from using our service, but you could still have access to the funds. This would be a really good mix of a solution. This would allow us as a company to innovate, to be fast, to grow. And people who want to use our service not having to trust us. Because it's all done through a smart contract, but not in a dangerous way. So I believe, and this is what I tell everyone around the world, going forward, it's not going to happen either as a centralized or as a decentralized way, just like no one here either wants a dictatorship or anarchy. We want something in the middle. We want the best out of both worlds. And where this really best out of both worlds is, no one knows today. We're going to figure this out along the way, and I hope you're going to join me on this ride. Because we are ready. The economy is ready. Society is ready. Everything is ready. So I want to say thank you. I'm looking forward to your questions on Slido. And if we're through Slido and we still have some time, we can go on the microphone. Thank you so much.